The huge crystal dome of the Galactic Council building was filled with angry voices and strange smells. Ambassador Kim Day sat alone at a small table marked with the Earth symbol, while hundreds of alien creatures stared at him with eyes that glowed like fire. Their voices mixed together into a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. Kim Day had been Earth representative for 3 years, but today felt different. Today felt dangerous. The air itself seemed heavy with anger and disappointment, as alien leaders from dozens of worlds pointed their claws, tentacles, and metal fingers at him like weapons. The snake creature from the desert world rose up on his long body. His scales caught the light as he spoke with a voice that sounded like steam coming from a broken pipe. We have waited too long for the humans to help us fight. The shadow creatures eat entire star systems for breakfast, while Earth sits behind their protective shields, doing nothing but talking. The humans send us pretty words while our soldiers die in space. Kim Day felt sweat running down his back under his formal Earth uniform. The snake alien was not wrong. Earth government had been having meetings for months while the war got worse every day. The Shadow Fleet had appeared from the dark edge of the galaxy 6 months ago, and they destroyed everything they touched with weapons that made no sense. A giant bug creature with eyes like diamonds clicked her mouth parts together, making a sound like breaking glass. She ruled millions of insect worlds, and her anger made the air feel electric. 3 full seasons we have begged for help. 3 seasons of death while humanity has committee meetings and rights reports. They want to make peace deals with monsters that turn planets into food. We lost the bright star system last week because we did not have enough ships to defend it. More alien voices joined in. The bear creature from the mountain planets laughed, but it was not a happy sound. His fur was gray with age, and his eyes held the sadness of too many lost battles. Careful planning, they say, strategic thinking they call it. While colonies burn and children scream for help, the humans hold meetings in safe rooms on their safe planet. The Council grows tired of empty human promises that mean nothing. Kim Day stood up slowly, knowing that every word he said next could decide the fate of all humanity on Earth. The room fell quiet, except for the sound of alien breathing and the hum of the crystal dome above them. Honored members of the Council, humanity believes in thinking before acting. We do not wish to make mistakes that could cost lives. We are not cowards, but we are also not fools who rush into danger without understanding the crystal being at the center of the chamber began to glow bright red, which Kim Day knew meant extreme anger. This creature was older than most stars and had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. When it spoke, the whole room trembled. The motion before this council is simple and clear. Humanity will send real military help to fight the Shadow Fleet within 30 standard days. If they refuse, the Council will remove Earth from membership and end all trade agreements, technology sharing, and protection treaties. Kim Day felt his heart stop for a moment. Losing Council membership would mean Earth would be alone in a galaxy full of dangerous enemies. Human technology was hundreds of years behind most other worlds. They needed the Council for everything from medical knowledge to space travel. Without these relationships, humanity would be trapped on one small planet. While threats surrounded them, we understand what the Council requires, Kim Day said, trying to keep his voice steady. Humanity will provide an answer within the time given. As the meeting ended and alien delegates began leaving, many stopped to look at Kim Day. Some looked sad for him, others looked at him like he was something disgusting they had stepped on. The message was clear to everyone. Humanity was seen as weak and useless, a species that talked big but ran away when real danger appeared. The bear creature stopped near Kim Day table and spoke quietly so others could not hear. Young human, your people have good hearts, but this galaxy does not care about good hearts. The Shadow Fleet will reach Earth eventually. Whether your Council membership saves you or not depends on what you do in the next 30 days. Choose wisely. After the chamber emptied, Kim Day sat alone, staring at the documents in front of him. Outside the crystal dome, he could see stars being born and dying in the great spiral arms of the galaxy. Each point of light represented billions of lives, depending on the Council to protect them from the Shadow Fleet. His communication device buzzed with an urgent message from Earth. The President wanted an immediate report on the Council meeting. Kim Day knew he would have to tell his leaders that humanity had 30 days to prove they were not cowards or face complete isolation in a hostile universe. The worst part was that the aliens were right. Earth did not have great fleets of warships or armies of super soldiers ready to fight across the stars. Human military technology could barely reach the nearest star systems, let alone travel to the war zones where the Shadow Fleet was attacking. The Council species had weapons that could destroy moons and shields that could protect entire planets. Humans had nuclear missiles and chemical rockets, but as Kim Dae gathered his papers and prepared to return to Earth, he remembered something his grandfather had told him when he was a child. Humans might not be the strongest or the smartest or the fastest species in the galaxy, but they had something else, something that made them survive when others gave up. They had the ability to find solutions where none seemed to exist. The crystal dome began to dim as artificial night fell over the council building in a few hours. Kim Dae would board a transport ship back to Earth where he would deliver news that could mean the end of human civilization as they knew it. The Council had made their demand clear: send military help or face exile and eventual destruction. As he walked through the empty corridors, Kim Dae passed memorial walls showing the names of billions who had died fighting the Shadow Fleet. The enemy left nothing behind when they attacked. Planets became empty rock floating in space, stars dimmed, and when cold, entire solar systems simply disappeared as if they had never existed at all. Tomorrow he would stand before Earth leaders and tell them they had 1 month to achieve the impossible: send effective military aid across impossible distances, to fight an enemy that consumed star systems for energy using technology that made human weapons look like toys thrown by children. Transport pad hummed to life as Kim Dae stepped onto the glowing platform that would beam him up to the waiting Earth ship. In 30 seconds he would begin the journey home, carrying the weight of humanity future in his diplomatic bag. But somewhere in the back of his mind a small voice whispered that maybe the Council was about to learn something new about humans. Maybe they would discover that being underestimated was exactly where humans fought best. The secure briefing room, deep inside the Virginia military base, felt like a tomb as Commander Kong Min sat across from Colonel Yoon Jin, reading mission details that seemed more like science fiction than military orders. The thick folder contained information about enemies that defied everything humans understood about physics and warfare. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Kong Min said, his voice calm despite reading about impossible odds. You want me to sneak into Shadow Fleet territory by myself, find out how their command system works, and somehow stop an enemy that has destroyed the combined space fleets of 47 different alien civilizations. Kang Min was not like other soldiers. At 32 years old, he had completed missions that officially never happened. His Navy SEAL training had been just the beginning of his transformation. Cybernetic devices implanted in his brain and nervous system gave him reflexes faster than any normal human could achieve. Genetic modifications allowed his body to survive in environments that would kill regular people instantly. His enhanced mind could process tactical information at speeds that seemed supernatural to observers. He could hold his breath for 20 minutes, see clearly in total darkness, and lift weights that would crush normal men. His bones had been strengthened with metal alloys and his muscles rebuilt with synthetic fibers that never got tired. Colonel Yoon Jin leaned forward with respect, clear in his voice as he explained the mission parameters. This is completely voluntary, Commander, and yes, the chances of survival are practically zero. But our scientists believe the shadow creatures have never encountered anything like human adaptability and unpredictability. They have been fighting the same alien tactics for months: organized fleets, coordinated attacks, predictable military strategies. Kang Min studied the tactical information, his enhanced brain analyzing data faster than the computers that had generated it. The Shadow Fleet operated like a single massive organism with shared thoughts and coordinated actions. Every battle they fought followed patterns that could be predicted and countered if someone understood their system. The aliens fight like they are playing chess, he said after several minutes of intense concentration, structured, logical, following rules and patterns that make sense. You want me to fight like I'm playing poker, using bluff, psychology, misdirection, and doing things they cannot predict or understand exactly. The Shadow Fleet greatest strength is their hive mind connection, but that might also be their biggest weakness. They do not understand individual thinking or unpredictable behavior. While they expect another organized military response, you will be doing something completely different. The briefing room door opened and President Cho Nam entered, followed by Ambassador Kim Dae, who had just returned from another emergency council session. His face showed the strain of delivering increasingly desperate messages between Earth and the Galactic government commander. Kang, the president began, I will not lie to you about what this mission represents. If you succeed, you might save not just humanity place in the galactic community, but possibly the entire galaxy itself. If I fail, nothing changes. Kang Min finished the sentence. The Shadow Fleet continues advancing, the aliens continue dying, and humanity gets expelled from the Council anyway. At least this way we go down fighting instead of hiding. Kim Dae stepped forward carrying news that made the situation even more desperate than before. Commander, I need you to understand something important. The Council does not just think we are cowards anymore. They think we are completely useless. Several alien species have begun preparing for humanity expulsion. Some are openly discussing whether Earth should be quarantined or even destroyed to prevent us from becoming a security risk. The room fell completely silent as the true stakes became clear. This was not just about proving human courage or earning respect from alien civilizations. It was about survival itself. If this mission failed, humanity might face extinction at the hands of the very aliens they had hoped to call allies. Kang Min stood up slowly and gave a perfect military salute. His enhanced body moved with fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural. The genetic and cybernetic modifications had transformed him into something beyond normal human limitations, but his heart and mind remained completely human. When do I leave? He asked simply. The president checked his watch, showing that the council deadline was approaching faster than anyone wanted to acknowledge. The transport ship leaves in 6 hours. Captain Veltar from the Lion Worlds has agreed to take you to the edge of Shadow territory, but he thinks our entire plan is insane. Colonel Yunjin handed Kang Min a sealed case containing equipment that represented the best technology from dozens of council worlds, modified and adapted for human use. Your tactical suit combines stealth technology from the ghost worlds, energy shields from the Crystal Federation, and weapons that mix human kinetic principles with alien energy manipulation. No enemy has ever seen anything like this combination before. Kang Min opened the case and examined gear that looked like it came from dreams and nightmares mixed together. The armor was sleek black metal that seemed to absorb light, while weapons attached to it hummed with barely contained energy. The helmet display showed readouts in languages from across the galaxy. How long do I have once I reach Shadow territory? He asked while testing the suit systems. Kim Dae consulted his diplomatic schedule with growing urgency. The council meets again in 15 days to hear humanity's final answer. If we cannot show them proof that we are actively fighting the Shadow Fleet, they will vote to expel Earth immediately. Several alien species have already indicated they will support immediate military action against us if we fail. Kang Min sealed the equipment case and prepared to leave for the most dangerous mission in human history. Around him, the most powerful leaders on Earth watched with mixture of hope and desperation, knowing they were sending one man to accomplish what entire civilizations had failed to achieve. There is one more thing, Commander Kim Dae said quietly. The Shadow Fleet has begun moving toward Council core worlds, including systems with billions of civilians. If they are not stopped within the next few weeks, the death toll will be beyond imagination. The weight of countless lives settled on Kang Min's shoulders as he realized that success or failure would determine the fate of not just humanity, but potentially every living being in the galaxy. The Shadow Fleet had to be stopped, and somehow he had become the weapon that would either save everyone or die trying. As he walked toward the transport that would take him to his ship, Kang Min thought about Earth and everyone counting on him to do the impossible. He had been trained, enhanced, and equipped to push human capabilities beyond their normal limits. Now he would discover whether that was enough to face an enemy that consumed star systems for breakfast. The mission was simple in concept and impossible in execution. Infiltrate enemy territory alone, learn their weaknesses, and find a way to stop creatures that had defeated every organized resistance they had encountered. But as Kang Min stepped onto the transport, he smiled grimly, knowing something the Shadow Fleet had never learned: humans were most dangerous when they had no choice but to succeed. The Pentagon War Room felt cold and heavy as Ambassador Kim Dae stood before a table full of Earth's most important military leaders. The walls showed screens displaying star maps where red dots marked Shadow Fleet attacks spreading across the galaxy. Like a disease, each red dot represented millions of dead and entire worlds turned to cosmic dust. General Park Min slammed his fist on the metal table, making coffee cups jump and papers scatter. His weathered face looked like carved stone as he spoke with a voice full of frustration and anger. This is completely impossible. The aliens want us to send fleets. We do not have to fight enemies. We cannot understand using technology. We can barely imagine our best spacecraft would take 6 months just to reach the edge of Shadow territory. By the time we got there, the war would be over and we would all be dead. Defense Secretary Lehigh leaned forward in her chair, her fingers drumming on the table like rain on a roof. She had been awake for 3 days straight reading intelligence reports about the Shadow Fleet, and her eyes showed the strain of too much bad news. Even if we could somehow transport large armies across the galaxy, what would human soldiers do against creatures that can walk through solid walls and eat energy itself? The Council species have been fighting this war for months with weapons that make our nuclear bombs look like firecrackers thrown by children. President Cho Nam rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of 8 billion human lives pressing down on his shoulders. The responsibility was crushing, and every decision could mean the difference between survival and extinction for the entire human race. What about that special operations idea, the one Colonel Yoon submitted last week? Tell me again why sending one person might work better than sending armies. Colonel Yoon Jin stood up and pressed a button that made the wall screens show detailed pictures and data about Shadow Fleet behavior. His voice was calm and steady as he explained his analysis. Sir, our intelligence suggests that the aliens are fighting this war completely wrong. They are using massive fleets and normal military tactics against an enemy that gets stronger from big battles. Every time they send large forces to fight, the Shadow Fleet just absorbs the energy and becomes more powerful. Admiral Song Hae shook her head in disbelief. Her naval uniform was covered with medals from 30 years of service, but none of her experience had prepared her for anything like this. How can one human soldier do what entire alien space navies cannot accomplish? These creatures have destroyed star systems that had billions of defenders. What makes you think a single person could make any difference? Colonel Yoon Jin highlighted parts of the intelligence data on the screens, showing patterns in Shadow Fleet behavior that most people had missed. The Shadow creatures work like a hive mind where all thoughts are shared between every individual. They are incredibly powerful when working together, but our analysis shows that single Shadow units become confused and weak when separated from the group. What we need is not another army to fight them. We need someone who can work alone, think independently, and attack targets the enemy never expects. The room became silent as everyone realized what the colonel was suggesting. They were talking about sending one person to face an enemy that had defeated the combined military might of dozens of advanced civilizations. It sounded like suicide disguised as strategy. General Park Min spoke quietly with disbelief clear in his voice. You want to send one soldier against creatures that eat planets for breakfast? This is not courage, this is madness. President Cho Nam stared at the star maps showing the advancing red dots of Shadow Fleet destruction. Each day brought new reports of lost worlds and dead civilizations. The council deadline was approaching fast, and Earth had no other options. Maybe it is madness, he said slowly, but it might also be exactly what the galaxy needs to see. Not human armies or human fleets, but human cleverness, determination, and courage in its most pure form. Kim Dae, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. His voice carried the weight of his meeting with the Galactic Council. The council members do not just think we are cowards. They think we are completely useless. Some alien species are already discussing whether Earth should be destroyed before we become a problem for them. This mission is not just about proving we are brave. It is about proving we deserve to exist. Colonel Yoon Jin pulled up more data showing Shadow Fleet weaknesses that other species had failed to exploit. The enemy expects organized resistance. They have learned to fight fleets, armies, and coordinated attacks, but they have never faced a single predator hunting them in the dark. They cannot predict individual behavior because their hive mind Cannot understand how one person thinks and acts alone. Lehigh looked at the mission parameters displayed on the screens. The plan seemed impossible, but everything about fighting the Shadow Fleet seemed impossible. What kind of person could even attempt something like this? We would need someone with training beyond anything we have ever done before. Someone who can survive in hostile alien environments, fight impossible odds, and somehow find a way to hurt an enemy that seems invincible. Colonel smiled grimly as he brought up a personnel file on the main screen. We have exactly the right person, Commander Kong Min, Navy SEAL with genetic and cybernetic enhancements that push human capabilities to their absolute limits. He has completed more classified impossible missions than anyone else in our military. President Cho Nam studied the file showing a soldier who had been modified and trained to operate in conditions that would kill normal humans. Instantly, enhanced reflexes increased. Strength, ability to survive in vacuum and process information faster than any unmodified person. The odds of success are essentially zero, he said after reading the complete mission briefing. Colonel Yoon Jin nodded. Honestly, yes, sir, but the odds of success using conventional methods are also zero. At least this way we show the galaxy what humans are really capable of when we stop trying to be like everyone else and start being ourselves. General Parkman stood up and walked to the star map, showing Earth as a tiny blue dot surrounded by hostile alien territory. Commander Kang fails, we lose one soldier. If we do nothing, we lose everything humanity has ever built or dreamed of. The choice is not really a choice at all. Admiral Song Hae looked around the room at faces filled with determination mixed with desperation. When do we tell Commander Kong about this mission? President Cho Nam checked the countdown timer showing days remaining until the council deadline. Right now, every hour we delay is another hour closer to Earth becoming completely alone in a galaxy that wants us gone. As alarms began sounding throughout the Pentagon complex, calling Commander Kang to an emergency briefing. Kim Dae wondered if they were about to witness the most heroic act in human history or simply the most elaborate form of suicide ever attempted. The fate of humanity now rested on one soldier ability to do what no one had ever done before: hunt and defeat an enemy that consumed star systems for breakfast using nothing but human determination and the refusal to accept defeat. In 18 days, the Galactic Council would demand an answer. In 18 days, Earth would learn whether humans truly deserved their place among the stars or if they were destined to face the darkness alone. The alien transport ship Stellar Wind dropped out of hyperspace at the very edge of the void sector where normal space began to twist and bend under the influence of shadow. Fleet Presence Captain Veltar stood on his bridge watching Commander Kong Min prepare equipment in the cargo bay while shaking his great-maned head in disbelief. I have fought in 17 major wars across 4 galaxies. Veltar growled, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall, but sending one primitive human against the Shadow Fleet is not courage, it is complete madness. Kong Min checked his modified tactical suit one final time, running diagnostics on systems that combine technology from dozens of different worlds. The armor incorporated stealth fields borrowed from the ghost worlds who could make entire fleets. Invisible energy shields adapted from Crystal Federation. Designs that could stop planet-killing weapons and weapons that mixed human kinetic principles with alien energy manipulation in ways no enemy had ever encountered. Captain, how many ships has the Council lost trying to fight the Shadow Fleet using conventional battle tactics? Kong Min asked as he sealed his helmet and activated the suit systems. Thousands, Veltar admitted with reluctance in his voice. But those were proper warships with trained crews, advanced weapon systems, and shields that could protect entire cities. You are just one soldier with strange equipment that might not even work exactly. I am something they have never seen before. Kong Min activated his stealth field and seemed to fade from view like morning mist disappearing in sunlight. The shadow creatures expect fleets and armies, coordinated attacks, and predictable military strategies. They do not expect a single predator hunting them in the darkness of space. The transport ship began to shake and vibrate as it entered the outer boundary of shadow territory. Space itself looked different here, as if the enemy presence drained light and warmth from the stars themselves. Sensor readings showed massive shadow constructs drifting through the void like living mountains. each one pulsing with malevolent intelligence that made the ship crew nervous. "These creatures are not like anything we have fought before," whispered the ship navigator, her crystalline voice tight with fear. "They do not just destroy planets, they consume the very essence of star systems, leaving behind empty space where nothing can ever live again." "Drop point in 30 seconds, announced the weapons officer, whose multiple eyes were focused on readings that showed Shadow Fleet patrols moving through the area like sharks hunting for prey. Commander, are you absolutely certain about this plan? Once we release your insertion pod, there will be no extraction, no rescue mission, no support from anyone. If something goes wrong, you will die alone in the most hostile environment known to exist." Kang Min moved to the launch tube, feeling the familiar calm that came before impossible missions. His enhanced senses were already adapting to the strange energy patterns and twisted physics of shadow territory. "There has never been support or rescue in any mission I have completed," he said quietly, thinking of all the classified operations where success meant no one would ever know what happened. "There's just the mission and whatever it takes to complete." I've paused for a moment, looking through the ship viewports at the twisted space where shadow constructs moved like living nightmares between dimensions. "Tell the Council that humanity sends its regards." The launch tube opened and Kang Min's stealth pod shot into the void, immediately disappearing from both visual detection and sensor readings. Captain Veltar stared at the empty space where the human had vanished, wondering if they had just witnessed an act of supreme heroism or ultimate foolishness. The pod drifted silently between massive shadow constructs that looked like organic spacecraft grown from living darkness. Each construct was the size of a small moon, but moved with fluid grace that defied normal physics. Kang Min, enhanced vision, cataloged everything he saw: energy patterns, movement rhythms, communication frequencies that pulsed between the creatures. Like a heartbeat, the Shadow Fleet was indeed operating as a collective consciousness, with thoughts and decisions flowing seamlessly between individual units. But their perfect coordination came at a cost that Kang Min tactical training immediately recognized. Individual units showed almost no independent thinking or ability to adapt when separated from the group mind phase. "One complete," he whispered into his communication system, knowing the message would never reach friendly forces because shadow territory blocked all normal transmissions. Beginning infiltration of primary target time to show these creatures what humans do best. His pod attached itself to the hull of the largest shadow construct using magnetic clamps designed to be undetectable by alien sensors. The surface felt warm and alive under his hands, like touching the skin of some massive sleeping animal. Cutting through the hull required tools that combined human engineering with alien technology, creating an opening just large enough for one person to slip through. The interior of the construct was unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. Corridors that twisted through dimensions, walls that seemed to be made from crystallized darkness, and air that hummed with energy patterns that made his enhanced nervous system tingle. The shadow creatures moved through their construct with flowing grace, their forms shifting between solid matter and pure energy. As needed, Kang Min's stealth systems kept him invisible, but he knew that detection was only one mistake away from certain death. His first objective was to locate the Construct Command Center and learn how the Shadow Fleet coordinated their attacks. Moving through the twisted passages required all of his enhanced agility and training, as gravity seemed to work differently in different areas of the ship. After 2 hours of careful movement, Kang Min found what he was looking for: a vast chamber where dozens of shadow commanders floated in meditation while coordinating attacks on Council strongholds. Their shared consciousness allowed them to plan complex strategies involving hundreds of constructs across multiple star systems. But as Kang Min watched their coordination patterns, he began to understand their fundamental weakness. The shadow creatures were so perfectly synchronized that they could not conceive of individual action. They planned for organized resistance, coordinated defenses, and predictable enemy behavior. What they could not plan for was one human moving through their stronghold like a ghost, placing small devices in critical systems and introducing chaos into their perfect order. Kang Min smiled grimly as he prepared to begin the most dangerous phase of his mission. He had spent 3 days observing and learning. Now it was time to start the hunt. The Shadow Fleet was about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous enemy was not the one you could see coming, but the one who struck from the darkness when you least expected it. As he moved toward his first target, Kang Min thought about everyone on Earth and throughout the galaxy who was counting on him to do the impossible. The shadow creatures had never faced anything like human determination backed by the refusal to accept defeat. Phase 2 beginning, he whispered to the darkness. Time to teach these creatures that humans are not prey, we are predators. 3 days deep in shadow territory, Commander Kang Min had become something the galaxy had never witnessed before. A human predator stalking prey that considered itself the ultimate hunter in the universe. His enhanced body moved through the twisted metal corridors of the shadow construct, completely invisible to creatures that shared a collective consciousness spanning thousands of light years. The shadow beings were magnificent and terrifying at the same time, living darkness that could phase between different dimensions, manipulate pure energy with their thoughts, and consume entire star systems to fuel their endless growth. But they had one fatal weakness that millions of years of collective evolution had built into their very nature. They could not understand or predict individual action. Kang Min crouched in a small alcove formed from crystallized void material, watching shadow commanders coordinate their next massive assault on a council stronghold. The creatures communicated through shared thoughts and emotions, their battle strategies flowing between minds like water, finding the easiest path downhill. It was beautiful, efficient, and completely predictable to someone trained in tactical analysis. His first target was a communication relay that connected this construct to the greater shadow network. While the creatures planned their attack on 3 separate council fleets, Kang Min placed a device no bigger than his thumb against the pulsing organic node. The device was not a bomb or computer virus, but something far more dangerous to a collective consciousness, pure chaos. The mechanism activated with a sound so quiet it could barely be heard, introducing random interference patterns into the shadow communication network. Nothing dramatic or obvious, just enough confusion to make individual units hesitate for tiny fractions of seconds, to make their perfect coordination stutter. Like a damaged engine trying to start across the massive construct, shadow creatures began experiencing something they had never felt in millions of years of shared existence, doubt. For beings who had known each other thoughts since birth, the sudden presence of uncertainty was like poison spreading through their collective nervous system. Kang Min moved silently to his second target, leaving behind confusion and the first seeds of fear. The shadow creatures could not understand what was happening because their hive mind could only perceive large organized threats. It searched frantically for enemy fleets, armies, coordinated resistance attacks. It found nothing because there was nothing to find, just one human moving through their stronghold like smoke through a forest. The second target was a power distribution center that fed energy to the construct main weapon systems instead of destroying the center outright. Kang Min introduced a subtle modification that would cause the weapons to overload. Unpredictably, not immediately, but during the stress of combat, when the shadow constructs needed their firepower most. By the 4th day, panic was beginning to spread through the shadow fleet network like wildfire. Reports flooded in from dozens of constructs across multiple star systems failing mysteriously, coordination breaking down at critical moments, individual units becoming isolated and vulnerable for reasons no one could explain. The collective consciousness that had been their greatest strength for eons was becoming a liability as fear and confusion spread instantly between every connected mind. When one shadow creature felt uncertainty, they all felt it. When one unit experienced system failure, the anxiety rippled through the entire network. The shadow fleet planned assault on the Council stronghold began to waver as commanders found themselves second-guessing decisions that had seemed absolutely certain. Just hours before, battle formations that had been practiced for centuries suddenly felt wrong. Weapon targeting systems that had never missed began showing erratic behavior. For the first time since the war began, the Shadow Fleet advance not only slowed but actually stopped. Several construct commanders began withdrawing from forward positions to investigate the mysterious failures plaguing their forces in the depths of the primary construct. Kang Min smiled grimly as he observed the growing chaos through the enemy own communication systems. His enhanced hearing could detect the confusion in their shared mental voices as they tried to understand how their perfect coordination was falling apart. The beauty of fighting a hive mind was that every success multiplied across their entire network. When he disrupted one communication node, the uncertainty affected thousands of creatures. When he sabotaged one power system, the fear of malfunction spread to every construct in their fleet phase. "Too complete," he whispered to the twisted darkness around him. Now, for the most dangerous part, his final target was the central command chamber, where the primary shadow entity that controlled the entire fleet maintained its connection to every construct across the galaxy. If he could reach it and disrupt that connection, the resulting chaos would cripple the Shadow Fleet ability to coordinate attacks. But getting to the command chamber meant passing through areas where shadow creatures were now actively searching for the source of their problems. They still could not conceive of a single individual causing such widespread disruption, but they knew something was wrong and they were becoming desperate. Kang Min checked his equipment one final time. The stealth systems were holding, but the constant use was draining power faster than expected. His enhanced body could survive in the hostile environment of the shadow construct, but each hour inside their twisted reality took a toll on his human physiology. The weapons he carried were designed to hurt creatures that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions beyond human understanding. Each shot would probably be his last chance, because the energy discharge would reveal his position to every shadow creature in the construct. As he began moving toward the command chamber, Kang Min thought about Earth and everyone counting on him to accomplish the impossible. The Shadow Fleet had seemed unstoppable, but their greatest strength was also their greatest vulnerability. They were so perfectly connected that disrupting one part of their network sent shockwaves through the entire system, like pulling one card from the bottom of a carefully built house. The right pressure in the right place could bring down everything. Time to cut off the head, he whispered as alarms began sounding throughout the construct. The shadow creatures were finally beginning to understand that they were being hunted. But by the time they realized what was happening, it would already be too late. Kang Min had spent his entire life preparing for missions that seemed impossible. Now he would discover whether human determination, enhanced by alien technology and fueled by the desperate need to protect his species, was enough to defeat an enemy that had consumed star systems for breakfast. The hunt was almost over. Soon the galaxy would learn whether humans deserved their place among the stars, or if they were destined to become just another meal for creatures that fed on the light of dying suns. The Galactic Council chambers erupted in chaos as emergency reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. For the first time in 6 months of devastating war, the Shadow Fleet advance had not just slowed, it had stopped completely. Several shadow constructs were reporting complete system failures and actually retreating from positions they had held for weeks. The impossible was happening, and no one could understand. We demand an explanation," screeched the reptilian prime minister, his forked tongue tasting the air with confusion and growing hope. "Our combined fleets could not achieve what these reports claim. One human soldier has accomplished it. Defies every law of military science." Ambassador Kim Dae stood at the human delegation table trying to hide his own amazement as he read tactical reports that seemed more like fantasy than reality. Commander Kang Min had not just infiltrated shadow territory, he had somehow turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Meanwhile, deep in the heart of the primary shadow construct, Kang Min faced the entity that commanded the entire Shadow Fleet across dozens of star systems. The creature towered above him like a living mountain of crystallized darkness, existing partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that human minds could barely comprehend. Its voice resonated through multiple realities, simultaneously carrying the weight of 1,000,000 consumed worlds and the collective memories of entire civilizations that had been devoured for energy. "You are the source of the chaos disruption," the shadow commander spoke, each word rippling through spacetime itself, one small biological unit. "How do you resist our collective consciousness? How do you act outside our ability to predict and control?" Kang Min stood his ground, even though his modified armor was barely protecting him from the overwhelming presence of a being that had existed since before human civilization began, the entity aura pressed against his mind like the weight of an entire ocean trying to crush a single grain of sand, because I am not part of any collective consciousness. Kang Min replied, his voice steady despite facing something that could snuff out stars with a thought, I think. Alone, I choose my own actions, I decide my own fate. You cannot predict me because you cannot understand what individual will really means. The Shadow Commander reached out with tendrils of living darkness, attempting to absorb Kang Min consciousness into the collective, where his thoughts would become part of their shared intelligence, but instead of a mind it could dominate and consume. The creature encountered something it had never experienced before: absolute individual determination backed by training that pushed human capabilities beyond their normal limits, genetic enhancements that made his body nearly indestructible, and most importantly, the desperate will of an entire species, refusing to accept defeat. Your collective consciousness is your weakness, Kang Min said as he activated every system in his tactical suit simultaneously. The armor began to glow with energy patterns that combined technology from dozens of council worlds modified by human engineering in ways no enemy had ever seen. You are so perfectly connected that when one of you feels pain, you all experience it. When one of you fears something, that fear spreads through your entire network. When one of you dies, the explosion that followed was not nuclear or energy-based, but something far more devastating to creatures that shared thoughts across impossible distances. It was a psychic cascade that ripped through the Shadow Fleet, collective consciousness like lightning striking a lake. The death of their primary command entity sent shockwaves of agony, terror, and confusion through every shadow creature in the galaxy. For beings who had never experienced individual death, who had shared thoughts for millions of years, the sudden severing of their central connection was trauma beyond their ability to process. Across dozens of star systems, shadow constructs began to break apart as their perfect coordination collapsed into chaos and madness. Without their collective consciousness to guide them, individual shadow creatures became confused, frightened animals lashing out randomly at anything nearby, including each other. Back in the council chambers, the reports continued streaming in with increasing urgency and disbelief. The Shadow Fleet was not just retreating, they were destroying themselves. Several massive constructs had completely disappeared, apparently tearing themselves apart in confusion. Other shadow units were attacking their own forces, unable to distinguish friend from enemy without their shared mental connection. The human accomplished this, asked the Queen of the Hive Worlds, her compound eyes wide with shock. One soldier did what our greatest armadas and most advanced weapons could not achieve, Kim Dae allowed himself a small smile as he thought of Commander Kang Min, whose final transmission had been characteristically simple: mission accomplished. Tell Earth the galaxy is safe. Tell the Council that humans are not cowards, we are survivors who refuse to quit. The reptilian Prime Minister slowly approached the human delegation table, his earlier contempt completely replaced by something that looked like genuine respect mixed with healthy fear. Ambassador Kim Dae, the Council owes humanity more than an apology. We judged your species by our own standards and found you lacking. We did not understand that sometimes the greatest courage comes not from massive armies but from individuals willing to stand alone against impossible odds. As celebration erupted throughout the council chambers and news of humanity's incredible victory spread to every corner of civilized space, Kim Dae realized that everything had changed forever. Humanity was no longer the weak, primitive species begging for acceptance. Among advanced alien civilizations, they had become something far more valuable in a galaxy full of dangers. The people you called when the impossible needed to be accomplished. When organized military might failed, when advanced technology was not enough, when entire civilizations faced extinction, there was now one species known for refusing to accept defeat. The bear creature from the mountain worlds stood and offered a formal salute to the human delegation, something that had never happened in Council history. The mountain worlds formally request a mutual defense treaty with Earth. We would be honored to fight alongside beings who possess such courage and determination. Similar requests began pouring in from other Council members who suddenly saw humans not as liability but as invaluable allies. One soldier had changed the perception of an entire species, and possibly saved every living being in the galaxy. But Kim Dae knew the real victory was not just military, it was proving that humans brought something unique to the galactic community, while other species relied on superior technology or overwhelming numbers. Humans succeeded through individual determination, adaptability, and the absolute refusal to give up when others declared something impossible. The Council had learned that humans were not cowards. They were something far more dangerous and valuable. They were the species that found ways to win when victory seemed impossible. They were survivors who turned their greatest weaknesses into unexpected strengths. As the emergency session concluded and alien delegates lined up to formally apologize to the human representative, Kim Dae thought about Commander Kong Min's sacrifice and what it meant for humanity future. The galaxy had discovered that humans were not just another primitive species struggling to survive among advanced civilizations. They were the people who made the impossible possible, one determined individual at a time, and sometimes in a universe full of collective consciousness and shared intelligence that made all the difference between survival and extinction, between hope and despair, between accepting defeat and fighting until victory was achieved. The Shadow Fleet was broken. Their advance stopped. Their constructs scattered across the galaxy like leaves in a storm, all because one human refused to accept that the mission was impossible.